So intimidating and bribing patients to remove negative reviews, ordering its own employees to post fake positive reviews, and then also altering before and after photos to misrepresent the actual results of procedures. This is Med Spa Mayhem, the podcast all about the chaotic world of medical aesthetics. From Botox to lasers to IV bars, learn how to tell real versus fake, legal versus illegal, and safe versus potentially deadly. Hear the crazy stories inside the med spa world and find out what questions to ask and how to spot the people cutting corners. I'm your host, Dr. Kate D. Together, we explore the wild west of medicine that is the aesthetics industry. Do you know the difference between a plastic surgeon and a cosmetic surgeon? One cosmetic surgeon captured headlines recently when he broke the law by requiring over 10,000 patients to sign illegal NDAs before even having any treatment. Attorney Becky Hsiao joins me today to discuss that case and delve into these dicey practices. Hi, this is Dr. Kate D, and I am back today with Becky Hsiao. She is my regulatory attorney friend who's been on the podcast before. Thanks so much for coming back today, Becky.
Hey, good morning, Kate. Thanks for having me again.
It is kind of early on a Sunday morning here, so thanks for getting up and talking to me today. I wanted to talk today about a headline that I saw in the Seattle Times recently about a cosmetic surgeon locally here in Seattle who is the subject of a civil lawsuit here in Washington. The Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, filed this lawsuit back in 2022, I believe. And the first part of it, I guess there was a determination about a part of this that shows that he violated the law, and the rest is still pending. So I wanted to just have you kind of comment on what all that means and what exactly is he doing, who is he, and what is the problem. So as far as I know, this was a consumer protection lawsuit, so a civil lawsuit.
Yep.
And that, here, I'll just read what was already determined, that the clinic broke the law by requiring more than 10,000 patients to sign illegal non-disclosure agreements before receiving any treatment.
Yep.
And can you expound on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, so this, as I understand it, as you said, Attorney General for the state of Washington, Bob Ferguson, filed a federal lawsuit against a physician or cosmetic surgeon, Dr. Javad Sajan. And so, within the complaint, which was a civil complaint, and, just as kind of a sidebar, it kind of makes me really happy that there are some, law enforcement officials at the state level paying attention and out there protecting consumers. I don't think you see a lot of state attorney generals focused on kind of this area, even though public health is within their remit. So I'd say that's refreshing. And so he filed a lawsuit against this surgeon in federal court in Washington, listing a number of claims, including, as you mentioned, falsely and illegally inflate. Well, one of them was for non-disclosure agreements. And then, there are a number of other claims, including falsely and illegally inflating his, online social media ratings, threatening to take legal action against patients if they spoke negatively of them, offering them cash and other free services for taking down negative reviews. So just, kind of a litany of quote unquote bad, consumer relationship and trying to inflate his practice and keeping people from being honest about their experience with this physician. And so as far as what you just described as the partial motion for summary judgment. So in court, before trial, you can make a number of motions to the judge, one of which is called a motion for summary judgment. And this one was partial because there's a number of claims, and they, I think Ferguson's office asked for summary judgment as to just one of the claims. And what that means effectively is there are no disputes about what the facts are relating to this claim. And every claim, every legal claim has several elements of the cause of action, right? And so basically what it's saying is if everyone stipulates that the facts are as they are, do they fulfill all the legal elements of this cause of action? And so it's a judge determination, not a jury determination. And the judge in this case determined that, yes, these non-disclosure agreements that he made his patients sign were unlawful. Now, I don't know what the elements of the claim is in Washington state, but that basically is the judicial determination.
So that was one of four major things. So the other three things, which I'll label here, are still going to court as far as we know. So the other three
to trial.
So intimidating and bribing patients to remove negative reviews, ordering its own employees to post fake positive reviews, and then also altering before and after photos to misrepresent the actual results of procedures. And Ferguson's office is claiming that Allure, this is the clinic that Dr. Sajan owns, is called Allure. He actually goes by many different names, but that one is the current one. He did these illegal practices in order to inflate the clinic's online reputation and deceive potential patients. So that's it all in the public announcement of this lawsuit. So I'm not, making any judgment on that. That's still pending. But I want to talk about these practices and what's happening to him, and also, the what he claims on his website, which is really a little bit out there. And I do I kind of understand wanting to work with patients and make people whole. I think that all of us want to, if there's ever anything that goes wrong, we want to make it right with our patients, and we would really prefer for them to come back and show us what's wrong, and maybe we can fix it and we can work with you and everybody can be happy. And there's a big difference between that and then just threatening people. Oh yeah, if you go out and say anything bad about me, I'm going to sue you. So I think that that's really problematic.
What's interesting? I thought one of the allegations in the lawsuit, it wasn't just about the threatening and the intimidation of the patients, but it is also offering free services in cash, like basically bribes for saying good things about you, right? He was just as concerned, just bias in general, right? Untruthfulness in general. So not just the negative, but also, I think one of the other allegations is having his own employees post, positive
Yeah, in
reviews.
the original announcement, I think this was, again, 22.
Yeah.
They actually put two fake reviews in the public announcement of this lawsuit. And one of them, it's a 5-star review. I went to Dr. Sajan and was extremely happy with my breast augmentation. I highly recommend going, blah, blah, blah. And then the second one was even, I thought, more clever, because it says she's really happy. And then it says, I was a little bit skeptical because it was inexpensive and took less than an hour, but wow, the results were made. So in the review, they're kind of advertising this amazing deal for great, amazing results for cheap, and so, and I will say that having been in this business now for 10 years, I am approached all over the place, not through Yelp, but through Google a lot, and then also on Facebook, or even just directly to my email, of people offering fake reviews. And they charge money all the time. I think there are people in other countries. Okay. And for X amount of dollars, we will, write fake reviews for you. And I just delete these things. But I can imagine they have these cold calls or cold emails. Tempting, right? Some people must do it, right?
Yeah.
And it is hard to get your patients to write real reviews. I mean, we ask basically everybody who walks out the door to write a review, and maybe 1% of people actually do it.
Really?
Yeah, it's just because people don't take the time and they're busy, and they're not reviewers or Yelpers or whatever.
Yeah.
And I will say that after writing the chapter of my book about reviews, I became a Google reviewer. Like, I started reviewing. I mean, I wrote him sort of facetiously in the book, hey, like, my kids' orthodontist, love them, 5 stars. And I really did do that because I thought, well, if I need it, everyone does. And so the legitimate great people need a steady stream of 5-star reviews, so that, if there's one kind of angry, disgruntled person and they write something, even if it's true, that, you know, it's kind of drowned out by all the positive voices, right?
Yeah.
But this guy obviously couldn't generate things legitimately, or if he could, just not enough. So I just, I just think that it's really remarkable. There was one part that I wasn't totally sure. Obviously, threatening to sue somebody if they write a bad review is just terrible. But tell me, what is illegal about offering like a free service if somebody takes down a bad review? I mean, obviously that person's willing to come back to you and have a service, so they must still trust you enough to have another service. So is that illegal?
That's a really good question. And I kind of joke that in some ways, even though this is like an adjacent area of the law, it is not kind of the area that I practice in all the time. And my guess, and this is simply just a guess, and I don't know, because state level laws are different. My guess is there could be some Washington statute that prohibits you from doing this potentially. To me, it is probably just like a false misleading advertising kind of claim. That's my best guess. It's not so illegality. We're not talking about criminal illegality here. It's probably civil illegality. And as you know, Kate, I practiced in California, and under California law, which the statutes, by the way, when I started practicing law, we still went to the library. And the California codes take up like an entire shelf. But one that we relied on a lot back in the day when I was a healthcare litigator was Business and Professions Code Section 16600. Boy,
you're going to remember the number now? I'm going to be really remember that number.
No, I mean, it's like a very typical one that everyone, a lot of people allege, and it's basically unlawful, untruthful, misleading business practices. It's a very broad statute that incorporates a lot of things, including things like misleading advertising. So if Washington State had similar statutes, that's the type of law that I think it violates.
Sure. And it for sure, we have that kind of law here. I know from my healthcare attorney that pretty much every state has some version of this, false and deceptive advertising law. So you can't do that. And so that makes sense that he's doing all these different practices to bump his review score to, 5 stars, instead of amassing, a bunch of really crappy reviews. I totally understand that.
It's Business and Professions Code 17200. I was thinking you can't prohibit someone from you can't have a non-compete here in California. 17200 is unfair competition law. And so unlawful, unfair, fraudulent business acts or practices. So in some respects, this type of statute is actually like more comprehensive than just misleading, right? Advertising, untruthful advertising. It is any kind of untoward business practice, which this would constitute, right?
Yeah.
So
I want to point out something else that's really interesting about I didn't know him or who he was when this headline came out. He went to real medical school, Medical College of Wisconsin. He did a really good residency, University of Minnesota, ENT. But then he claims on his website to be both a cosmetic surgeon and a plastic surgeon. And his fellowship was with the American Academy of Cosmetic Surgery, which is not an ABMS recognized entity at all. And so I had to look, well, what my friends or colleagues who are facial plastic surgeons, they did not do that fellowship. So what did they do? So I wanted to explain for people the difference between plastic surgeons, facial plastic surgeons, oculoplastic surgeons, and then this other thing called cosmetic surgeons, which is a whole different ball of wax. So plastic surgeons go to med school, and then they have a very, very ridiculously long training. So they basically do 7 years of plastic surgery, 2 years usually of general surgery, and then 5 years of plastic surgery. And then some of them do a fellowship on top of that for another 1 to 3 years. Okay, so it's probably the longest amount of training of any specialty in medicine is plastic surgery.
So you go to med school, that's 4 years. Then you have 7 years on top of that.
Correct. Yes.
And then potentially some sort of fellowship. And then what about like residency? Then you pick that up
Right. It's essentially forever. I mean, it's forever. It's a really long.
Your entire in that point in your life, it's like you're
old. You're
adult life.
If you go straight through this, you're well into your 30s before you get your very first real job. Yeah. Wow. So plastic surgeons are incredibly well trained, and they're really amazing surgeons. I did a plastic surgery rotation in med school, and I absolutely loved it. I was so incredibly blown away by the talent of these surgeons. And this is not true of every surgical subspecialty. I won't get into that, but if you ever want something done to your skin and you care what it looks like, go to a plastic surgeon.
Go to a plastic surgeon. Yeah.
So anyway, then there are but then there are a lot of ENTs do plastics. Ear, nose, and throat is ENT or otolaryngology, and they do 4 years of med school, and then the 4 years of ENT, and then they can do a facial plastic fellowship. And that's very common. And that is called the American Board of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery. So these are experts in face surgery. They're really, really good at it. They know facial anatomy more than anybody. They're fantastic. And that is what a facial plastic surgeon is. It's an ENT who has then gone on to do facial plastic and reconstructive surgery. So I have, for instance, Dr. Yael Hallis, who wrote the foreword of my book. She's a New York facial plastic surgeon, and she's amazing. Okay.
So when you talked about the first category, which is plastic surgeons, you were just talking about general plastic surgery anywhere, not just face.
They can do breast augmentation. They can do, tummy tucks. They can do facelifts.
Okay. And then kind of like this sub classification of ENTs who
very separate. So for facial plastic surgery, ENTs, and a lot of ENTs are facial plastic surgeons. Okay. Yeah. And they're also allowed to call themselves that.
Okay. So then in terms of like this, so same thing as a surgeon, you go to your 4 years of med school, and then how long?
And then it's 4 years of ENT. 4 years of ENT. I don't know how long.
The fellowship. I think
it may be 1 year. I bet there's options to do more than 1 year.
Okay, but still really
but they're very
rigorous.
Highly trained. Yes.
Still very rigorous, just more specialized in face. And like, it sounds like years of training, like somewhat equivalent.
Yes. And there are also, so then there are oculoplastic surgeons who do ophthalmology first. So they do 4 years of med school. They do ophthalmology residency, and then they can do a plastic surgery fellowship after that.
Okay.
And I have the one guy I send people to for blepharoplasty, so surgery to deal with your eyelids, right? If you've got heavy eyelids or underneath your eyes, he is the guy that everybody in Seattle sends their most difficult cases to, and he does facelifts and neck lifts and basically eye lifts, if you want to call it that.
At some point.
I know we all kind of need that eventually.
I think my mother did, but I probably.
So those people are all sort of legitimate plastic surgeons. And then there's this thing called cosmetic surgery, and people do not understand the difference between plastic and cosmetic surgery. If you are not a plastic surgeon, but you do these procedures, you can call yourself a cosmetic surgeon. And there's really essentially no such thing. So, you can be a family doc, and you can be, anything, and go do some training
Mm-hmm.
in cosmetic surgery and call yourself a cosmetic surgeon. So that's what this Dr. Sajan did. So he did a fellowship, a 1-year fellowship, I believe, with the American Academy of Cosmetic Surgery. And I had to look that up because I'd never heard of that. And so
Okay.
that
It
is a
sounds it sounds pretty
sounds
official.
real. Yes, I know. And
Yeah.
that's what's on his bio, not actually on his bio on his website, but he's affiliated with Swedish Hospital here in Seattle, and Swedish
Uh-huh.
Hospital put that on. It's a non-recognized fellowship. It's not recognized by the ABMS, or the American Board of Medical Specialties. So
Uh-huh.
he did that. So he's allowed to call himself a cosmetic surgeon, but he's not allowed to call himself a plastic surgeon. So if you look at his website, it says cosmetic surgery in the text, but then it also lists a bunch of awards for plastic surgery. And these little awards, it says, top 10, blah, 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 plastic surgery. This
But those
says it was,
awards are just like Yelp and like
well,
other,
no,
are they
not
official?
even Yelp,
Oh,
not even Yelp.
oh,
I had to
okay.
look this up. So it says
Okay.
these award badges are from something called the, quote, American Institute of Plastic Surgeons. So I had to figure out what that is. That
Oh
is
my gosh.
actually a
Not
organization that you can join as a member in
yeah.
order to get awards. They are not an organization that's an academic organization or a professional organization. They
Mm-hmm.
literally are set up to hand out awards for quote unquote plastic surgery. And they will give these quote unquote plastic surgery awards to cosmetic surgeons who are not plastic surgeons, okay, if they're members. And so I had to look this up. So I don't
Wow.
know
This
what the
is
terms are, but you
crazy.
can become a member of this thing. You pay them money, and then you can get an award for
Wow.
being quote unquote a plastic surgeon. So it's one way of sort of in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, but like falsely advertising that you're a plastic surgeon without actually saying it, because you've got a badge that says plastic surgery on it that you've essentially, purchased from this organization that has nothing to do with genuine plastic surgery. Because, there are genuine academic
Right.
organizations and professional
Sure.
organizations for
Sure.
plastic
But
surgeons.
this
This
is
is
not
not
one
one of
of
them.
them. Now, this
No.
is okay. So, two things. One, as a consumer, and I would probably, like I'm not, I say I'm pretty cautious and I don't think I'm like the run of the mill consumer. And this is not information I would have known. I don't know how, as a consumer, you'd ever be able to understand this or track it down. And frankly, I think this should be the second piece of Bob's lawsuit is these organizations. They're helping and enabling some of these doctors to perpetrate and
Yeah.
engage in
Well,
illegal activity, right?
I don't know if those organizations are illegal. I mean, it's probably
Well,
founded
the
in another state, and but using those badges, that
well,
from what I understand, see, this is the thing. From what I understand from my previous conversation with Brad Adato, he was on a podcast a couple weeks ago. If you say something on your website, you have to back it up with an actual award that you got. And the thing is that he supposedly got that award. So the thing that I'm picking apart is that the award says plastic surgery when in fact he's a cosmetic surgeon.
oh, so the
Now,
thing I'm picking apart, and Frank, I'll transparency. I didn't go on this quote unquote organization's website, right? But
yeah.
what are they representing themselves out to be? What do they actually do?
Well,
It's
on their
obviously
website, it says that they were founded in 2015 in order to recognize the excellence of plastic surgeons in America.
okay. And do they have some sort of methodology and
That I don't
criteria?
know.
Do
I
they
didn't
have
have, yeah. So full disclosure, I did not have enough time to
yeah.
go
I mean,
spelunking in their website to figure out how they determine these awards. But I do know that they have a membership, and that's how they make their money, is by getting surgeons to be members
yeah,
of
well,
their
so
organization.
So I didn't either, but my only point, and again, maybe this isn't coming from me as a lawyer, but me as a kind of consumer, and it's just like these organizations enable these practices that
Right.
Ferguson's alleging against his physician, right? It's
Yeah.
more of the same of false, misleading, untruthful representations that make it difficult for a consumer to fully understand what exactly it is they're getting.
Yeah. And I have focused very much in this podcast and in the book about trying to help people figure out how to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
And this one's really hard because
Yeah.
the big red flag to me is the use of cosmetic surgeon on his website. If you're reading that word cosmetic surgeon, that means they're not a plastic surgeon. If somebody's using that terminology, because plastic
Sure.
surgeons really use the term plastic surgery, they know the
Right.
difference.
But my point being, as a consumer, and again, I don't think I'm that unsophisticated, is I wouldn't be able to tell you what the difference between a cosmetic surgeon and a plastic surgeon
Well,
is.
now you can.
Now I
That's
can.
why hopefully
Yay.
people are
Yes.
listening.
But do you see my point? Is that it
Yes.
sounds
Yeah.
official and it
It
sounds
does.
trustworthy, and
Yep.
and it's not, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just way less training. If somebody, so for instance, this guy is a specialist in the face. Okay. He did real ENT. That's real. Okay. It's hard to be an ENT. So I'm not
Okay.
begrudging him that at all.
Okay.
But he's busy doing breast augmentation, other things in the body.
Right.
He has he has this one fellowship to do that. It takes, as I said, 7 years to be a plastic surgeon and be able to do all those different kinds of surgery.
Right.
And there are plenty of people doing a much shorter training period to learn how to do breast augmentation and other kinds of plastic surgery around the body and the face, frankly. I mean, if he weren't an ENT, I'd be worried about face too. But he's an ENT, so he knows his way around the face. And it may be that he's been doing this long enough and he's had the experience that he can do, those other body parts. I'm just saying I would never myself go to somebody to work on my belly who wasn't a board certified plastic surgeon. Absolutely not.
Right. And the point being, it's up to every person to decide for themselves what they want.
Yeah.
Right. And it's up. And all you're saying is, if he were forthcoming and his website wasn't misleading, you could make that choice in a
Yes.
more fact-filled manner.
Yeah. And honestly, though, there are many, many cosmetic surgeons who don't have the kind of training he does. Like, he's got a full ENT residency. There are plenty of people who are, family practice where they're not surgeons.
Right.
There are people who are, all kinds of other specialties where you can just do a course. You don't even have to do a fellowship because there is no actual recognized fellowship. So you can call yourself a cosmetic surgeon and you could really, maybe you took a weekend course. There are plenty of people like that out there. So you just have to be really, really careful. I personally would not go to someone who calls themselves a cosmetic surgeon. So you just have to know. I mean, if you know somebody and you trust them, then that's one thing. But
I think the difficult thing is, like, in different professional services, it's like the stakes are not as high. Now, I mean, okay, so a lawyer, right? Some lawyers are better than others. I think, I'm not, and if it's a civil action, all you're talking about is money. So yeah, it would suck to lose, more money, or whatever the case may be. Criminal is a little different. You'd want a good criminal attorney, because that
otherwise you go to jail.
You could, it potentially could. But here you're talking about, and again, I'm not like downplaying any of this, but it's like, yes, you could go to jail, but there is an appellate process, right? And you hope the justice system works. Here you're talking about potentially irreparable injury, and I think that's what's super difficult about this is because if you make a mistake in choosing someone who doesn't know what they're doing, it could be life altering. I mean, I guess it's the same in the law, but
Yeah.
but
Well,
this feels a lot more, for whatever reason, serious.
I just interviewed a young woman who told her story of going to an unlicensed person in California. By the time this airs, that will have been last week. So
Mm.
she almost died, permanent scarring. And this person was unlicensed and had no insurance. And for whatever reason, did not get thrown in jail. I haven't figured that out quite yet. But she was practicing medicine without a license, almost killed somebody. And for whatever reason, the law didn't do anything about it.
Well, how long ago was this? I mean,
Well, this was in 21. So it's just
okay,
past the statute of
interesting.
limitations. I had to look that up in California.
Yeah,
It's 2 years. And
yeah,
but this
pretty
girl was in the
short
hospital for
for
4 months and was 23. So she didn't really
yeah,
know what to do. And she was so sick, she couldn't really do anything.
sure,
And when she
sure.
figured out, like, I don't know. Anyway, it's
Well, I mean, we've talked about this before, right? Like, even if let's say she had approached a DA, for example, you've got to get someone to take your case. Like, this is very sadly the truth. Crimes are committed all the time that do not get charged or prosecuted because you've got to get someone to care. You can't, as an individual person, just go out there and try to get, a criminal action instigated
right.
without a DA willing to support
I think
that
that's something that we've all kind of grown up watching TV, thinking that these things get prosecuted. And in fact, so many things don't. And I was upset that my Botox bandit didn't get prosecuted because she just stole and we knew exactly who she was and nothing happened to her. But for this, this woman was almost killed. And the person who did that to her is still, out there doing this.
Yeah. So, and this is a really tricky one because obviously, okay, so I'm never giving legal advice on this. It's just my personal opinion. But, like if it were someone who was licensed, you'd go to the medical board and you'd file a complaint and say, this is what happened. And you'd hope, I mean, I've actually been involved in, defending a couple of medical board complaints. So, that is like I would say quasi judicial in some respects. Like you could get someone's license yanked, right? Through that
100%,
process.
yeah.
Right. But here you've got someone who's unlicensed. So
right. No recourse at all.
Yeah. Yeah. There's really very little recourse. I mean, I don't know what the civil statute of limitations, but as you said, this woman could file a lawsuit, but those are extremely expensive. And it doesn't sound like there's anything to collect against at the end of it.
Correct. And that she talked about that, that because this person doesn't really have assets, and she has no insurance, the lawyers are really not interested. And her lawyers basically want to, drop her.
Yeah.
Because there's no payoff. So you really would need a sort of crusading attorney to take you on for free.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if anyone is listening who's that kind of person, let me know.
Yeah, because I think that's where, I mean, this is kind of where you're going with this is like, sadly, because the systems aren't set up to always protect us, right? What you can do is just, you've got to go into these things with your eyes wide open and being your own advocate. And
yes,
being
and that is why I'm here. That's why I'm talking about this stuff. That's why I wrote Med Spa Mayhem, because the way it is right now, consumers have to be educated. Otherwise, you may very well be either injured, maimed, even killed, or just plain old ripped off. So,
and this is an industry that's it's not shrinking. It's not contracting. It's only growing.
It's exploding. It's growing and growing. And as I've said, much of that growth is completely illegal. So I wanted to just end with advice for people on where to report things. I've talked about this in the past, but if something does go wrong, there are various places to report to. So one is the state attorney general, who generally is in charge of consumer protection.
Public health also.
And public health.
Yep.
Reporting to the medical board, even an unlicensed person, because the medical board in many states can issue a cease and desist to somebody who's practicing medicine without a license.
So wait, can I correct that just a little bit? So
Sure.
so the state attorney general is responsible for enforcement on public health issues. They're not actually responsible for public health. That is usually the Department of Health. Slightly nuanced, but I just wanted to be
Yes. Okay.
accurate in that. And yes, I agree with you. And I will say I have personally, I personally do file complaints sometimes with the state attorney general's office, not because I think that they're going to take action every time, but because it's very difficult to detect these kinds of practices. In this particular situation, a consumer did report it to Bob Ferguson's office, and this is how it led to the action, the lawsuit. And so, if you do file a complaint with the attorney general's office, I mean, they have their own priorities, so not everything is going to result in action, but without it, nothing will, right? So that's what I would say for sure.
Right. Totally agree. So if you have a legitimate complaint, you absolutely should file it. Otherwise, nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
So we talked about the medical board. The nursing board is same thing if the person has a nursing license. And then, of course, there's tort action, so you can sue them.
But again, got to get an attorney to take your case, and you've got to have injury.
They'd have to have some kind of insurance. Yes.
Yeah. Or
and then of course the Department of Public Health, if there is something to report, like for instance, in this the case in California of this young woman who was in the hospital, she got a very, very severe mycobacterium infection from all the injections that she got. And actually the hospital reported that to the public health. So there was a public health investigation that was initiated by the doctors who took care of her.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they did issue actually a cease and desist to this person, but then she just renamed her clinic and moved and reopened.
Is she still active?
She is still, yes. She has an active Instagram in California and LA.
Wow.
And she shut her website down, and Yelp says she's permanently closed, but she still posts stories on Instagram. So she doesn't have anything permanent on Instagram since last June. But stories which disappear after 24 hours, she posts those constantly. Yeah. So in any event, that is kind of the state of affairs as of today. So our take-home message for our listeners is beware of anybody calling themselves a cosmetic surgeon. And obviously, if somebody is threatening you with a lawsuit if you write a bad review, that is not legal. And don't hesitate to report when somebody's really doing something egregious. Do not hesitate to report them to any of these bodies. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave our listeners with, Becky?
No, I think that covers it. Really is just being careful and doing your homework before you trust someone with your face or your body.
Yeah, I would say if you're considering anything, don't do it that day, and don't feel like you have to do it in a hurry because there's some special deal that day. I would go home and do your research and look up the person, look up their licensure, look up their training, look up, all the details, and then decide. Because it really can be a very devastating thing if it turns out that person is not a good actor.
Well, we've also talked about this in the past, and I think this is important too, is like, I think you should compare pricing, compare different physicians, because what you and I have talked about is if it's very super inexpensive compared to the peers, something could be off.
Yes, the price, and then also just what they tell you. Always get a second opinion. My son just had an ACL repair, and we went to 2 top surgeons in Seattle to get opinions, and they told us 2 different things. And we had to sort out what made sense to us. We're both doctors too. We had to sort it out, and so we went with the one that we trusted more. But it's not that I think that he would have been, in less talented hands at the other place, but we didn't trust the data he was telling us. And so I think that's really important for absolutely everything, especially elective things where you're paying cash And there are a lot of people out there who are very interested in getting your cash and may or may not be so talented or smart or trying to work in your best interest.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
Anyway, thank you so much for talking with me today, Becky. It's always great to talk with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I do love our little conversations on these topics. We come from it kind of in, I think we have this similar perspective, just different angles, right?
Oh, yeah. It's very helpful also for me to have a legal perspective because as a physician, obviously I'm very opinionated, but on the law, I really have no idea what I'm talking about. So thanks for setting me straight, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kate.
If you have a question or a crazy story of your own that you'd like to hear on Med Spa Mayhem, contact us through our website, medspamayhem.com, or check out our contact info in the show notes. If you learned something and like what we're doing, please tell your friends and give us a 5-star rating in your podcast app. And read the book. Med Spa Mayhem is coming out on June 11th, 2024. Pre-order now on Amazon. You can find the link to pre-order and a link to our website in the show notes. Thanks for listening. I hope this discussion has helped to clear up the confusing terminology around plastic and cosmetic surgery and has exposed some of the sneaky and sometimes illegal tactics some of these actors use to get you in the door and ultimately to pay up. If you've witnessed or fallen prey to any of these schemes, please reach out and share your story. You can always reach us at medspamayhem.com. This has been Med Spa Mayhem with Dr. Kate D. We are so grateful you're listening, and we hope you've learned at least one fun or possibly disturbing fact today. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Oh, and read the book. Med Spa Mayhem comes out June 11th, 2024, available everywhere books are sold. You can pre-order now on Amazon. Links and more can be found in the show notes and on medspamayhem.com.